Story 6. Everything that rises must converge. By Flannery O'Connor. Characters. Julian, the protagonist of the story, a young man who accompanies his mother on a bus ride. He holds progressive views and is frustrated by his mother's racist attitudes. Julian's mother, a white woman from the South who holds onto outdated racist beliefs. She struggles to adapt to the changing social dynamics around her. Carver, a young African-American boy on the bus, accompanied by his mother. He becomes a focal point of tension between Julian and his mother. The African-American woman, Carver's mother, a large, imposing woman who clashes with Julian's mother on the bus. She serves as a catalyst for the story's climax. Julian's grandfather, mentioned in the story, he is elderly and infirm, prompting Julian's mother to express concerns about his well-being. Summary. Flannery O'Connor, born in Georgia in 1925, faced family upheaval due to her father's illness, leading them to relocate. She pursued education and creative writing at Iowa University. Everything Rises Must Converge revolves around the dynamic between Julian, an aspiring writer, and his mother in the American South. Set against the backdrop of racial integration on buses following a 1956 Supreme Court ruling, it delves into their contrasting perspectives on race relations. Mrs. Chesney, Julian's mother, grapples with anxiety over riding with black passengers. Her son accompanies her to the Y Health Club, reflecting the evolving societal norms in the post-segregation era. The story revolves around Julian, who accompanies his mother to her weekly reducing class at the Y. Julian's mother insists on this routine due to her doctor's orders to lose weight. She's self-conscious about her appearance and relies on Julian for support. She wears an expensive hat, expressing regret over the purchase, which Julian finds unattractive. Julian's mother, a widow, has worked hard to provide for him, making their relationship complex. They live in a neighborhood past its prime. Julian resents the sacrifices he makes for his mother's happiness. Despite their differing perspectives, Julian's mother tries to uplift him, emphasizing the challenges of the world. The story delves into their contrasting attitudes towards life. Julian confronts his mother about the hat purchase, insisting she keep it. She expresses doubt, but Julian tells her to enjoy it. She reflects on the world's troubles and claims the bottom rail is on the top, frustrating Julian. She asserts her knowledge of herself, emphasizing her aristocratic lineage. Julian retorts, criticizing their current circumstances. His mother nostalgically references their ancestors' prosperity and slaves, prompting Julian's irritation. She pities mixed-race individuals, advocating for racial segregation. Julian urges her to change the topic, but she persists. Their exchange highlights their differing perspectives on heritage and societal progress. Julian and his mother discuss racial identity, with Julian expressing mixed feelings. His mother recalls fond memories of her grandfather's house, emphasizing the family's aristocratic roots. Julian, however, views it with disdain, longing for its former grandeur. He resents the neighborhoods they've lived in, while his mother remains adaptable. She reminisces about her childhood nurse, Caroline, and expresses respect for her black friends. Julian becomes increasingly irritated and insists she change the topic. They wait for the bus, and Julian's frustration grows. He removes his tie, prompting his mother to criticize his appearance. Their exchange reveals their contrasting attitudes toward race and societal standing. Julian and his mother continue their discussion, debating whether true culture resides in the mind or the heart. They board a bus, and Julian assists his mother, who engages in friendly conversation with fellow passengers. She uses a folding fan to cool herself and remarks on the heat. The woman across the aisle laments youth from good families stealing car tires, emphasizing the importance of proper upbringing. She reveals her son is in 9th grade, while Julian's mother proudly mentions her son's recent college graduation and aspiration to become a writer, currently working in typewriter sales. Their interactions highlight their differing perspectives on societal issues and personal accomplishments. Julian retreats into his inner mental space, a sanctuary from the world's absurdities. He views his mother's life as a struggle to uphold Chesney ideals without the corresponding wealth. Despite his resentment, he acknowledges her role in his success. Success. She attributes his gloominess to his youth and radical ideas. Ironically, Julian excels independently, surpassing his mother's expectations. He maintains objectivity towards her and perceives her with clarity. On the bus, a Negro passenger's arrival sparks tension. Julian's mother points out the perceived danger, while Julian calmly observes. In an assertive move, he swaps seats with another passenger, signifying his rebellion against his mother's dominance. Julian desires to engage the Negro passenger in an elevated conversation but is met with indifference. His mother looks at him with disapproval, while the woman with protruding teeth eyes him curiously. He asks for a light, though lacking cigarettes. The no smoking sign dissuades him further. His mother's face reddens, but Julian maintains his composure. He envisions a scenario where he refuses to leave the bus at their stop, treating his mother as a stranger. He contemplates teaching her a lasting lesson, but no opportunity arises. Detached, he considers ways to challenge her views on race, but past attempts have been awkward or unsuccessful. Julian daydreams about challenging his mother's prejudices by introducing a Negro doctor or a Negroid woman into their lives. He envisions her reaction, hoping for a lesson to be learned. The bus brings in a large, imposingly dressed colored woman with a young boy. The boy sits beside his mother, disappointing Julian, who was hoping he would sit next to him. The woman settles beside Julian, her presence unsettling his mother. He revels in the discomfort this causes her, recognizing the symbolic significance of the seating arrangement. Suddenly, he notices the two identical hats worn by his mother and the woman, and he is overcome with joy. He realizes that this unexpected lesson in justice is well deserved. Julian's mother struggles to bear his presence next to the colored woman. The woman's agitation is palpable. However, Julian's hopes of teaching a lesson dwindle as his mother begins to find the situation amusing rather than discomforting. The woman's son, Carver, seeks attention from Julian's mother, and she responds with affection. Carver's mother, growing frustrated, calls him back, but he playfully evades her grasp, choosing to sit near Julian's mother instead. Despite the woman's clear discomfort, Julian's mother attempts to engage with her, attempting to show graciousness in a condescending manner. As the woman disciplines Carver, Julian realizes the futility of his efforts to teach a lesson. When they reach their stop, Julian fears his mother will give the child a nickel, reinforcing the divide he hoped to challenge. Julian's mother insists on giving a penny to the little boy, despite Julian's protests. The woman reacts with anger and strikes Julian's mother with her red pocketbook. Julian chastises his mother, telling her she got what she deserved. He helps her gather her belongings and encourages her to get up from the sidewalk. When she finally stands, she appears disoriented. Julian hopes the incident serves as a lesson. However, she seems unable to recognize him for a moment. She starts walking in the wrong direction, indicating a lack of familiarity. Julian questions whether they will walk home or continue to the Y. She chooses to go home. Julian tries to convey the gravity of the situation to his mother, explaining that the incident with the woman represents a larger shift in society. He urges her to face the new realities and stop clinging to outdated notions of race relations. However, she remains unresponsive, her appearance disheveled. Julian implores her to wait for the bus, but she insists on going home. Suddenly, she asks him to tell her grandfather and Caroline to come get her. Julian is stunned by her words and watches helplessly as she stumbles forward, her face contorted. She collapses on the pavement, her gaze fixed and unseeing. Panicking, Julian rushes for help, but his efforts feel futile as the world seems to drift further away. The darkness of the situation overwhelms him. Multiple choice questions. 1. The reducing classes was designed for A. Fat teenagers. B. Slim women. C. Fat women. D. Fat men. 2. Julian's mother boasts of her grandfather that he had slaves. A. 50. B. 100. C. 150. D. 200. 3. The story is written at the background of Integration Act that ended the segregation between A. Rich and poor. B. Black and white. C. Europeans and Indian. D. Americans and Asians. 4. In comparison to his mother, Julian was more blacks. A. Prejudiced. B. Suspicious. C. Generous. D. Intolerant. 5. Julian does not like his mother to A. Talk to black people. B. Be more intimate with black women. C. Live with black people on the same seat. D. Give money to black children. Extra MCQs. 1. Where was Flannery O'Connor born? A. Georgia. B. Iowa. C. Texas. D. Alabama. 2. Why did Flannery O'Connor's family relocate? A. Due to her father's illness. B. Pursuing education. C. Seeking better job opportunities. D. A change in weather. 3. What university did Flannery O'Connor attend for creative writing? A. Iowa University. B. Harvard University. C. Yale University. D. Stanford University. 4. What is the title of the story discussed in the text? A. Everything that rises must converge. B. The Southern Conflict. C. Racial integration in the South. D. The Y Health Club Chronicles. 5. What is the relationship between Julian and his mother in the story? A. Mother and son. B. Siblings. C. Friends. D. Cousins. 6. What is the significance of the 1956 Supreme Court ruling in the story? A. It led to racial integration on buses. B. It overturned a previous ruling on segregation. C. It established new education policies. D. It had no impact on the story's events. 7. Why does Julian's mother insist on attending the reducing class at the Y? A. Due to her doctor's orders. B. To meet new people. C. To support Julian's writing career. D. For exercise. 8. How does Julian feel about his mother's expensive hat? A. He finds it unattractive. B. He thinks it suits her well. C. He believes it's worth the price. D. He admires its design. 9. What is Julian's occupation in the story? A. Typewriter sales. B. Lawyer. C. Doctor. D. Writer. 10. What does Julian resent about the neighborhoods they live in? A. Their lack of parks. B. Their deteriorating condition. C. Their high crime rates. D. Their distant location. 11. What racial attitudes does Julian's mother express on the bus? A. She pities mixed-race individuals. B. She advocates for racial segregation. C. She believes in equal rights for all races. D. She has no specific opinions on race. 12. How does Julian respond to the Negro passenger on the bus? A. He attempts to engage in conversation. B. He remains indifferent and observes. C. He expresses fear and discomfort. D. He switches seats to assert his independence. 13. How does Julian's mother react when the woman tries to discipline Carver? A. She intervenes to support Carver. B. She remains passive and watches. C. She scolds the woman for her actions. D. She chastises Carver as well. 14. What is Julian's initial reaction to his mother's collapse on the pavement? A. He panics and rushes to get help. B. He remains calm and assesses the situation. C. He walks away in frustration. D. He becomes angry with his mother. 15. Why does Julian's mother ask him to tell her grandfather and Caroline to come get her? A. She is disoriented and confused. B. She wants to visit them. C. She is feeling nostalgic. D. She is unhappy with Julian's behavior. 16. How does Julian feel about his mother's role in his success? A. He is resentful of it. B. He is grateful for it. C. He is indifferent to it. D. He is proud of it. 17. How does Julian view his mother's life and efforts to uphold XII ideals? A. As a futile struggle. B. As a noble endeavor. C. As a successful endeavor. D. As a joyful experience. 18. What is Julian's occupation at the beginning of the story? A. Typewriter sales. B. Lawyer. C. Doctor. D. Writer. 19. What does Julian's mother emphasize about their family's background? A. Their aristocratic lineage. B. Their working-class roots. C. Their immigrant heritage. D. Their religious beliefs. 20. What is Julian's initial reaction to the Negro passenger on the bus? A. He attempts to engage in conversation. B. He remains indifferent and observes. C. He expresses fear and discomfort. D. He switches seats to assert his independence. 21. What does Julian's mother emphasize about their ancestors? A. Their prosperity and ownership of slaves. B. Their struggles and hardships. C. Their love for art and culture. D. Their pursuit of education. 22. Why does Julian remove his tie on the bus? A. He is feeling overheated. B. He wants to look more casual. C. He is uncomfortable in formal attire. D. He wants to provoke a reaction from his mother. 23. How does Julian react when the woman tries to discipline Carver? A. He intervenes to support Carver. B. He remains passive and watches. C. He scolds the woman for her actions. D. He chastises Carver as well. 24. How does Julian's mother react when the woman tries to discipline Carver? A. She intervenes to support Carver. B. She remains passive and watches. C. She scolds the woman for her actions. D. She chastises Carver as well. 25. How does Julian react when he sees his mother collapse on the pavement? A. He panics and rushes to get help. B. He remains calm and assesses the situation. C. He walks away in frustration. D. He becomes angry with his mother. B. Short questions. 1. How often did Julian's mother take reducing class at Y? Julian's mother attended reducing class at the Y on a weekly basis. It was a regular routine for her, and she insisted on following this regimen due to her doctor's orders to lose weight. This commitment to her health and appearance was important to her, and she relied on Julian for support in this endeavor. Her dedication to attending the reducing class demonstrated her determination to maintain her physical well-being, even if it meant facing the discomfort of the bus ride and potential interactions with people that made her uneasy. Despite any reservations or anxieties she may have had, she prioritized this class as part of her routine, indicating how significant it was to her. This weekly commitment also reflected the importance she placed on her appearance and her desire to adhere to societal standards of beauty. It showed her dedication to maintaining a certain image of herself, even in the face of changing societal norms. Overall, her regular attendance at the reducing class at the Y underscored her determination to take care of herself, and adhere to the expectations placed upon her, both by her doctor and by society at large. 2. Why did Mrs. XII want her son to escort her on the bus? Mrs. Chesney wanted her son, Julian, to escort her on the bus primarily due to her anxiety and discomfort about riding with black passengers. She felt uneasy about the idea of sharing public transportation with people of different races, especially in the context of the newly integrated buses following a 1956 Supreme Court ruling. This racial integration had brought about significant changes in societal norms, and Mrs. Chesney found it challenging to adapt. By having Julian accompany her, she sought a sense of security and support. She relied on him not only for physical assistance but also for emotional reassurance. Julian's presence offered her a familiar and trusted companion, someone who could provide a buffer against any discomfort or anxiety she might experience during the bus ride. Additionally, Mrs. Chesney's reliance on Julian demonstrated their complex relationship. As a widow, she had worked hard to provide for him, and this dependence on him for companionship and support reflected the intertwined nature of their lives. Despite their differing perspectives and occasional conflicts, Mrs. Chesney still sought Julian's presence to navigate situations that made her feel vulnerable or uneasy. In this case, having Julian accompany her on the bus was a way for her to cope with the changing dynamics of racial integration in society. 3. How did Julian's mother boast of her clan? Julian's mother, Mrs. Chesney, boasted of her clan by emphasizing their aristocratic lineage and historical prestige. She recounted fond memories of her grandfather's house, which she described as a place of grandeur and prosperity. She took pride in the fact that their ancestors were wealthy and owned slaves, a testament to their elevated social status in the past. Mrs. Chesney nostalgically recalled the splendor of their ancestral home, emphasizing its architectural beauty and the opulence it once represented. She cherished memories of the house's glory days and expressed regret over its current state of decline. Despite the neighborhood's faded grandeur, Mrs. Chesney clung to the memories of their prosperous past, painting a romanticized picture of their family's history. Her boasting extended beyond the physical aspects of their ancestral home. She also emphasized their lineage's cultural refinement and sophistication. In her eyes, their family represented the epitome of Southern aristocracy, and she took great pride in preserving that image. This pride in her clan's heritage reflected Mrs. Chesney's attachment to a bygone era, one characterized by wealth, social status, and a sense of entitlement. It also highlighted the stark contrast between her idealized vision of the past and the realities of their current circumstances, underscoring the challenges she faced in adapting to the changing societal norms of the post-segregation era. 4. Why did Julian not like his neighborhood? Julian harbored disdain for his neighborhood due to its decline from its former glory. He viewed it as a once thriving area that had fallen into disrepair and lost its prestige. Julian's discontent stemmed from the stark contrast between the neighborhood's current state and the prosperous past that his mother frequently reminisced about. He resented living in a neighborhood that had seen better days, as it symbolized a decline in their family's social standing. Julian longed for the opulence and affluence that had characterized their ancestors' lifestyle, which he believed was now lost to them. This sentiment was further fueled by his mother's nostalgia for their former grandeur, which he found burdensome. In Julian's eyes, the neighborhood's faded splendor served as a constant reminder of their family's fallen status, making him acutely aware of the gap between their current circumstances and the idealized image of their past. This discontent contributed to Julian's overall dissatisfaction with his mother and their living situation, as he struggled to reconcile her attachment to a bygone era with the realities of their present-day existence. 5. Why did Julian's mother feel uncomfortable on the bus? Julian's mother felt uncomfortable on the bus due to her anxieties and prejudices regarding racial integration. She was apprehensive about riding with black passengers, which was a result of the changing societal norms following a 1956 Supreme Court ruling on racial segregation. This ruling had led to the integration of public transportation, including buses. Mrs. Chesney's discomfort stemmed from her deeply ingrained racial prejudices and her reluctance to accept the changing social landscape. She was accustomed to a segregated society and found it challenging to adapt to this new reality. Her unease was further exacerbated by the presence of black passengers, as she struggled to reconcile her ingrained beliefs with the evolving societal norms. Additionally, Mrs. Chesney's self-consciousness about her appearance added to her discomfort. She was on her way to a reducing class at the Y, which heightened her anxiety about how she was perceived by others on the bus. This combination of racial tension and personal insecurities contributed to her overall discomfort during the bus ride. Overall, Mrs. Chesney's unease on the bus was a result of her resistance to the changing racial dynamics in society, and her own insecurities about her appearance, making the journey a challenging and tense experience for her. 6. Why did Julian daydream of Negro professor, lawyer, or doctor? Julian daydreamed of encountering a distinguished Negro professor, lawyer, or doctor in order to challenge his mother's deeply ingrained racial prejudices. He hoped that by introducing her to accomplished individuals from the black community, he could disrupt her narrow perspective and promote a more inclusive understanding of race relations. Julian recognized that his mother's attitudes towards race were deeply rooted in ignorance and fear. He believed that exposing her to highly educated and accomplished black individuals would force her to confront her own prejudices and challenge the stereotypes she held. By engaging in meaningful conversations about art, politics, or any subject that transcended superficial racial divides, Julian hoped to foster a sense of mutual respect and understanding. Additionally, Julian's daydreams were a reflection of his desire for a more progressive and inclusive society. He sought to break down the barriers of racial segregation and promote a world where individuals were judged based on their character and achievements rather than the color of their skin. Overall, Julian's daydreams of encountering distinguished Negro professionals were driven by his aspiration to confront his mother's prejudices and promote a more enlightened and inclusive perspective on race relations. He saw it as a means to challenge the status quo and contribute to a more harmonious and just society. 7. How did Julian's mother and another white woman talk about black people? Julian's mother and another white woman engaged in a conversation about black people that reflected their deeply ingrained racial biases and stereotypes. The conversation revealed their condescending and paternalistic attitudes towards the black community. Julian's mother and the woman discussed the importance of upbringing in determining a person's behavior. The woman lamented instances of young individuals from good families stealing car tires, implying that a proper upbringing should prevent such behavior. This sentiment implies a belief in the inherent moral superiority of white individuals, and a presumption of inferiority within the black community. Furthermore, Julian's mother proudly mentioned her son's recent college graduation and his aspiration to become a writer, while the woman disclosed that her own son was in 9th grade. This exchange subtly reinforced a sense of superiority, suggesting that Julian's accomplishments were noteworthy in comparison to the woman's son's education level. The conversation, though not explicitly derogatory, carried undertones of racial paternalism and a sense of white privilege. It demonstrated how deeply ingrained racial biases can manifest in seemingly casual conversations, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and reinforcing divisions between racial groups. 8. Why did Julian's mother look for a nickel? Julian's mother looked for a nickel to give to the little boy, Carver, as an act of condescending generosity. Despite Julian's protests and the tension between the two families, she persisted in her attempt to assert her perceived benevolence towards the black child. This action reflects her patronizing attitude and a misguided attempt at racial superiority. Her insistence on giving the nickel exemplifies a common trope of white individuals trying to assert dominance and control over black individuals through acts of charity or token gestures. It also highlights her discomfort with the changing racial dynamics in society, particularly in the post-segregation era. Furthermore, Julian's mother's desire to give the nickel showcases her inability to recognize the complex realities of race relations. She clings to outdated notions of racial hierarchy, failing to grasp the deeper issues at play. This moment encapsulates her struggle to adapt to the evolving social landscape, and her resistance to relinquishing the sense of privilege associated with her racial identity. Overall, Julian's mother's search for a nickel symbolizes her deeply ingrained racial biases and her misguided attempt to assert her perceived superiority, even in the face of a changing world. 9. Why did the black women speak, "He don't take nobody's pennies"? The black woman's statement, "He don't take nobody's pennies," carries a deeper meaning rooted in the complex racial dynamics of the time. It is a response to Julian's mother's attempt to offer a nickel to the little boy, Carver. The woman's remark is a rejection of the idea that her child should accept charity from a white person, particularly in the form of a coin. This statement reflects a sense of pride and self-respect within the black community, especially in the face of a history of racial discrimination and exploitation. The woman is asserting that her child should not be beholden to white individuals for handouts, reinforcing the idea of self-sufficiency and autonomy. Furthermore, it also signifies a resistance to perpetuating a dynamic of white benevolence and black dependence, challenging the traditional power dynamics that existed between the races. By refusing the nickel, the woman is asserting her agency and refusing to be placed in a position of subservience. Overall, the black woman's statement serves as a powerful expression of her determination to uphold her own sense of dignity and agency in the face of racial inequality, rejecting any attempts at condescension or charity from white individuals. It encapsulates the broader struggle for self-determination within the black community during a time of significant social change. 10. Why did Julian's mother want to turn back without taking classes at Y? Julian's mother wanted to turn back without taking classes at the Y because of the humiliation and emotional distress she experienced during the incident on the bus. The encounter with the black woman and her son, as well as Julian's subsequent criticism of her actions, left her feeling vulnerable and exposed. Her attempt to offer a nickel to the little boy was met with rejection and criticism, causing her great embarrassment. Furthermore, the confrontation on the bus highlighted the stark contrast between her outdated racial attitudes and the evolving social norms of the time. This realization likely compounded her feelings of discomfort and inadequacy. She may have felt out of place and ill-equipped to navigate the changing racial dynamics of the post-segregation era. Given the emotional toll of the bus incident, Julian's mother likely wanted to retreat to the familiarity and comfort of her home, where she could avoid further potential embarrassment or confrontation. The incident had shattered the illusion of her social standing and left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. Turning back and avoiding the Y represented a way to protect herself from further emotional distress. C. Long questions. 1. How and why are the views of mother and son different towards racism in America? Julian and his mother hold fundamentally different views towards racism in America, reflecting the generational gap and evolving societal norms. Julian's mother, a product of her time and upbringing, exhibits deep-seated racial prejudices. She clings to the remnants of a segregated South, expressing discomfort and anxiety when faced with the prospect of sharing a bus with black passengers. Her attitudes reflect the entrenched racism of the era, where racial segregation was still prevalent in many aspects of American life. She longs for the days when her family's prosperity and status were maintained by the labor of black slaves, indicating a nostalgic attachment to an unjust and discriminatory past. In contrast, Julian represents a younger generation more attuned to the changing tide of civil rights and racial equality. He aspires to be a progressive writer and holds more enlightened views on race relations. While he still grapples with some internal conflicts and mixed feelings, he clearly resents his mother's outdated attitudes. He advocates for a more inclusive and integrated society, as seen in his daydreams of introducing distinguished black professionals into his mother's life. Their differing views are also reflected in their interactions with other black characters on the bus. Julian's mother engages in condescending and patronizing behavior towards black passengers, emphasizing her perceived superiority. Julian, on the other hand, attempts to break free from this mindset by trying to engage in elevated conversation with a black man, seeking a connection beyond race. Overall, Julian represents the changing attitudes of a younger generation, one more open to the idea of racial integration and equality. His mother, however, clings to the deeply ingrained prejudices of the past, struggling to adapt to the evolving social landscape. This generational divide highlights the broader societal shift occurring during the civil rights movement, where younger individuals were more likely to challenge the status quo and advocate for racial progress. 2. Justify the title Everything That Rises Must Converge. The title Everything That Rises Must Converge encapsulates the central theme of the story, emphasizing the inevitable convergence of disparate elements, particularly in the context of racial tensions and evolving societal norms. Firstly, the title suggests the idea of societal progress and the push towards racial integration. In the era depicted in the story, the United States was undergoing significant social and political changes, particularly in terms of civil rights and racial equality. As marginalized communities, particularly African Americans, gained recognition and rights, there was a sense of rising towards a more inclusive and just society. This upward trajectory is mirrored in the title's reference to everything that rises, signifying the gradual ascent towards a more equitable social order. However, the word converge introduces a crucial nuance. It implies that this rising is not an isolated, individualistic endeavor, but rather a collective movement towards a common point. In the context of the story, this convergence can be understood as the merging of diverse racial and cultural groups. It speaks to the idea that progress and social change necessitate unity and mutual understanding among different communities. Communities. The title also resonates with the dynamic between Julian and his mother. They represent two contrasting perspectives on race relations, each on its own trajectory of development. Julian's more progressive and inclusive outlook represents a rising towards a broader understanding of humanity and equality. His mother, on the other hand, clings to outdated attitudes, indicative of a resistance to change. The collision of these contrasting viewpoints in the story is a manifestation of the convergence hinted at in the title. Their interactions, particularly on the bus, serve as a microcosm of the larger societal shifts occurring during the civil rights movement. The title underscores the inevitability of these divergent perspectives meeting and challenging one another, ultimately driving towards a more comprehensive and just society. Everything that rises must converge encapsulates the story's exploration of social progress, racial tensions, and evolving perspectives. It emphasizes the necessity for diverse elements to come together and engage in order to foster a more inclusive and equitable society. 3. Julian speaks to his mother, "That was the whole-colored race, which will no longer take your condescending pennies. That was your black double. She can wear the same hat as you, and to be sure." Elaborate what Julian wants to convey to his mother. In this statement, Julian is attempting to convey several layers of meaning and criticism to his mother regarding her attitudes towards race, and her sense of superiority. Firstly, Julian is addressing his mother's condescending behavior towards black people. He accuses her of offering them small sums of money, represented by the term, condescending pennies, as a form of charity or token gesture. By using the word, condescending, Julian is highlighting his mother's patronizing attitude towards African Americans, implying that she sees herself as superior and is bestowing her generosity upon them. He is critical of this behavior, as he believes it perpetuates a demeaning and unequal relationship between white and black individuals. Furthermore, Julian introduces the concept of a black double. By this, he means that the African American woman on the bus serves as a mirror or reflection of his mother. They both wear similar hats, symbolizing a shared humanity and commonality that transcends race. This concept challenges his mother's belief in racial superiority, suggesting that people of different races are not fundamentally different from one another. He is urging her to recognize the shared experiences, aspirations, and dignity that exist within all individuals, regardless of their racial background. Julian's tone is one of frustration and exasperation. He is trying to break through his mother's ingrained prejudices and make her understand the significance of the encounter on the bus. He wants her to recognize that her attitudes are outdated and harmful, not only to the African American community but also to herself. He believes that clinging to these prejudices is preventing her from truly understanding the changing dynamics of the world around her. Overall, Julian is attempting to challenge his mother's deeply ingrained racial biases and encourage her to see the humanity in all people, regardless of their race or background. He wants her to let go of her condescending attitudes and embrace a more inclusive and empathetic perspective towards others. 4. Comment on the emotional change that Julian undergoes at the end of the story. At the end of the story, Julian undergoes a profound emotional transformation that is marked by shock, despair, and a sense of tragic realization. The sudden turn of events shakes him to his core and forces him to confront the consequences of his actions and attitudes. When Julian's mother collapses on the pavement, his initial reaction is one of shock and disbelief. He is stunned by the severity of the situation and is momentarily paralyzed by the sight of his mother in distress. This moment of intense emotion reveals his vulnerability and the depth of his connection to his mother, despite their conflicts and disagreements throughout the story. As he rushes to her side and tries to revive her, Julian's despair intensifies. He is faced with the grim reality that his mother may be seriously injured or even dying. The anguish he feels is palpable, and he is filled with a sense of helplessness. This is a stark contrast to the earlier parts of the story, where Julian displayed a detached and critical attitude towards his mother. The tragic turn of events also brings about a moment of profound realization for Julian. He is forced to confront the consequences of his actions and attitudes towards his mother. He recognizes the weight of his words and the impact they have had on their relationship. This moment of clarity is a turning point for Julian, as he comes face to face with the gravity of his behavior and the irreparable damage it may have caused. Overall, the emotional change that Julian undergoes at the end of the story is a powerful and transformative experience. It highlights the complexity of his relationship with his mother and forces him to confront his own shortcomings. It is a moment of deep introspection and self-discovery that ultimately leads to a greater understanding of the complexities of human relationships and the importance of empathy and compassion. Compassion. 5. The story talks about racial discrimination in American South. There is still caste discrimination in different parts of Nepal. Write an essay in about 300 words entitled Caste Discrimination in Nepal. Caste discrimination in Nepal. Caste discrimination remains a prevalent and deeply rooted issue in various parts of Nepal, despite significant strides towards social equality and justice. The caste system, a rigid hierarchy that categorizes individuals based on their birth, continues to marginalize and oppress a significant portion of the population. The caste system in Nepal has historical origins deeply entrenched in religious and cultural practices. It divides society into four main hierarchical groups: Brahmins, priests and scholars; Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers; Vaishyas, merchants and traders; and Shudras, manual laborers. Below these four groups lie the Dalits, historically considered untouchables, subjected to severe social exclusion and discrimination. Caste discrimination manifests in various aspects of daily life, affecting education, employment, access to resources, and social interactions. Dalits are often denied equal opportunities in education and face barriers in accessing quality healthcare and sanitation facilities. They are disproportionately represented in low-paying jobs and are subjected to harsh working conditions. Dalits face systemic exclusion and social stigma. They are often relegated to segregated settlements, denied entry into temples and public spaces, and are even prohibited from using the same sources of water as higher caste individuals. Such practices perpetuate a cycle of poverty and limited opportunities for upward mobility. Nepal has made efforts to combat caste-based discrimination through legal means. The Constitution of Nepal explicitly prohibits any form of discrimination based on caste, and various policies and initiatives have been implemented to uplift marginalized communities. However, the enforcement of these laws remains a challenge, with deep-rooted societal norms and attitudes often hindering progress. In recent years, there has been a surge in activism and advocacy against caste discrimination in Nepal. Civil society organizations, human rights groups, and Dalit activists have been at the forefront of this movement, working towards greater awareness, empowerment, and policy reform. Caste discrimination continues to be a pressing issue in Nepal, posing significant challenges to the nation's pursuit of social justice and equality. While progress has been made, concerted efforts from all sectors of society are crucial to dismantling the deeply ingrained caste system and ensuring a more inclusive and equitable future for all Nepalis. It is imperative that Nepal works towards fostering an environment where every individual, regardless of caste, can fully realize their potential and contribute to the nation's progress. Best of luck.